No matter how much we or even I resisted it, structure rebuilds freedom. What happens accidentally is most of us sprint without direction, but the real win is realigning everything we're doing to the season we're in. And I learned something in this episode. Fall, this time of year, isn't just a season. It's actually scientifically proven to be your most productive window. And if you ignore it, you're leaving serious momentum on the table. We're all entrepreneurs, and I can only speak for myself, but I know I've spent the Q4 of the year, Q4, reacting instead of resetting, letting summer go and then trying to survive to the end of the year to kick off the new year. But what if I told you that this time of the year is our peak season, and I, just like you, have probably been misusing it all along? I'm fired up for this one because fall isn't just a vibe or a pumpkin spice latte. I learned this. It's an advantage that we have as human beings that we're probably not using. I've read a study in this that blew my mind, but this episode is all about helping you finish the year strong, not burnt out, not behind, but deeply aligned and focused to lead into the new year. And if this is your first time here, welcome to the Mind is Yours show. This is where entrepreneurs discover that true scaling isn't about hacks or tactics. It's where we align your mindset, we align your message, we align your marketing and customer journeys to create sustainable growth that feels authentic and aligned to who you are. And I'm stoked that you are here. And today's episode, I give you a 6-part framework. It's really 5 and then keep it running, but 6-part framework to help you in this moment realign your time, your goals, your leadership, if that's applicable, and your energy with fall's natural rhythm. This study blew my mind that there's an operating temperature in the season, like outside ambient air, that makes us run on overdrive to the best of our ability. And so whether you're a solopreneur, right, you have a small team or you're running a big team, this episode is all about a pause, a break check to reset that brings clarity, consistency, and calm, plus a clear path to execute. So at the end of this episode, the goal is that you'll have a mapped out plan to finish the year without the chaos, knowing that summer is done, structure is back, and we know Christmas is coming, and this is the time to set ourselves up. And so we set ourselves up now, run the year strong, and then set ourselves up again in January when everybody else is scrambling. And so we have to understand that Q4 is not like a survival sprint to try to make it to the end of the year, because that leads to burnout and crash. But this time is the best time to get grounded, focused, and aligned. We have 3/4 of time to look at what worked, what didn't work, where we need to focus. And then we sprint through Q4 to get into the new year. But if you don't pause now and reset your structure, we end up feeling scattered and reactionary. And then we're just trying to make it through the holidays. And then that pattern continues. So this is the window, this current moment, this current time when you're listening to this to use it. And so we dive into that scientific study very, very shortly on temperature fall, the seasonal shift, the 6-step reset framework that works for teams and solopreneurs that you're not only just going to use now, you're going to use it every quarter or every month to come back to. And the real reason that structure leads to peace and how to rebuild it fast. And so if you want momentum that lasts, right, this is consistency over intensity instead of just this like flash of motivation or this reaction, then this framework, this structure, this is your playbook. And I'm really excited. So let's dive into the show. So have you ever noticed that how everything just kind of clicks in the fall, like this time of year fall, not like when we fall down. Sometimes those things click too, but like somehow the fog lifts, there's this newfound energy to push, the distractions fade, and then our energy seems to somewhat match our ambition. Truthfully, it's not a coincidence. It's actually a proven productivity pattern. But here's the kicker. If you don't lean into it, if you don't prepare for it, you'll miss it. And so this episode is for the entrepreneur who is really tired of limping through the end of the year or trying to survive, right? Instead of waiting till January 1 to kind of kick off, instead, you're ready to realign to the seasons that we navigate as entrepreneurs, right? If you want to ride the wave of this energy and of this productivity versus like crashing out, I'm going to break down this season and productivity and how to align your mindset, your message, your momentum, your habits, your behaviors, and your strategies in fall to close the year out strong and kickstart the new year with some drive. And full credit to Rescue Time, the time tracking website. They wrote an incredible article about this, and the framework that they share, I had to grab and I wanted to share because it landed very, very deeply for me. And I'm really excited to share it with you. And so in this episode, I'm going to be sharing about this time of the year, fall, right? And this episode is for you, whether you are a solopreneur, whether you have a team, you're working on your goals alone, or you have shared team goals and roles and responsibilities. I'm going to relate it to you because after taking some time to outline the notes of this episode, I realized that this is one of the most powerful and profound frameworks, the six-step framework for all of us to use, but not only in the trap that most of us fall into, myself included, which is the new year, but really quarterly and starting to understand the seasons of life and entrepreneurship. And so it's interesting because I initially saw this and I was like, no way. And then they start dropping study after study after study that proves that biologically as human beings, we actually tend to operate better in the fall. But if we think about it, if you're a parent like me, sometimes the summer is crazy. Or even if you're not a parent and any of your clients or the people you serve or your team are parents, things are really inconsistent. It's hard to stick to a schedule. You have summer breaks, you have vacations, you have summer school, you have none. Our schedules are changed. But once fall kicks off, which is like right now, things tend to kind of settle back in and give us that structure that allows us to focus. And that's where that drive and ambition start to match together, right? So the interruptions, right? The family trips, the childcare gaps, the long weekends, these tend to disrupt our working schedule. And if, like I said, you're not a parent, that schedule still kind of affects you. You probably have a team member that's a parent, a client that's a parent, they're rescheduling calls. And now is where everything's starting to kind of settle back into a rhythm. And this predictability of this rhythm and this structure given by the world and the season creates the mental bandwidth, but also the consistency for us to get really deep with focused work. And this is the study that blew my mind. Cooler weather improves focus. So I read this study because I had to dig in and I was like, no way. And they actually found that our brains work best when the temperatures outside or in our environment fall between 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 72 degrees Fahrenheit. I think that's around like 22 to 24 or 20 to 23 Celsius. But that crisp autumn air, depending on where you live, unless you're in like some really, really hot place, actually improves our concentration and mental clarity. And then you stack on top of the fact that all of us as entrepreneurs in every business have this little bit of pressure. We call it the Q4 urgency, right? It creates this momentum. We have these deadlines. We know that Christmas is coming, right? Big holiday season. We're typically not sprinting. And they're close enough that they begin to kind of take priority, whether you're prepping for Black Friday and you do Black Friday in your business, Black Friday sales, promos, or prepping to end the year strong to then kick off in January 1. This time of the year is really the best time to do an audit of like, where am I in the race? What mile marker am I at? What's working that I'm going to continue to doing, and what's not working that I need to make an adjustment for? And the truth for all of us, whether we're solopreneurs or whether we're team leading entrepreneurs, is that motivation alone, like the urgency of Q4, this coming time, doesn't guarantee that we or our employees or our team effectively channel our energy or our productivity in this season. And so it's up to us, whether we're leading ourselves or we're leading our team, to intentionally like reset structures, especially after like a big summer break, or to clarify our goals and what we're working on and create the right environment for ourselves and for our teams for success. And so I got to give full credit, like I said, to Rescue Time on this. And we'll link it in the show notes below. But this is the 6-step framework for you to utilize in this season, like right now, like as of listening to this, like you're not going to delay, you're not going to wait, you're going to follow these steps and you're going to make adjustments. You're going to make sure that you're spending time in the right area, that you have initiatives that you're working towards, that you're prepping media and marketing for Black Friday, that you're refining a customer journey, that you have the core offer you want to see over the finish line for the year, that you've reblocked your schedule, that you've checked your calendar and made sure that where you're spending your time and how you're spending your time is aligned with where you want to go or what goal it is that you're trying to accomplish. And so I'm going to read the 6 steps to you and I'm going to break them down. So step number 1 is rebuild structure after summer chaos. Step number 2 is reestablish shared goals. Step number 3 is clarify roles or energy. This would be for you, where you're spending your time in buckets, or your team and who's doing what. Step number 4 is reduce distractions. Step number 5 is create psychological safety. And step number 6 is to help your productivity go the distance. And I'm going to break each one of these down for you so that you understand and kind of how to audit this. And what I think, and after reading through these and adding my notes to all of these, this is truthfully a lot of the work that we do with clients when we're working for a full year. Every quarter, we come to the end of that quarter and we go through these steps. So not only is this something to focus on now at the end of the summer, leading into fall, this is something to focus on any time that there's a change. Maybe there's a business change. Maybe there's a team change. Maybe there's a priority change. Maybe it's just quarterly to quarterly. Maybe you audit against these every month and you take an hour and you just sit down and you go through each one of these to make sure that the workout, for lack of a better metaphor, that you are following is actually getting you closer to your goal or moving in the direction that you intentionally are heading. Okay. So step number 1, rebuilding structure after the summer chaos, right? I know for me as a parent, especially one who co-parents with his ex, summer is hard for routines. Every day is different. There's a part of me that when he went back to school, I just went, oh, predictability. It's like I wake up every morning with an alarm because I know what time we have to leave. I know when I pick him up. I know what days I have him. And it's no different for us when it comes to work. And so we know that that structure supports us really, really well, and that we need that structure to kind of thrive. And so this time of the year, September, October, is a perfect time to kind of reset it. And so what you want to do is, whether you're doing this as a solopreneur or whether you're doing this for you and your team, all of us are on the table for this, including ourselves. And so the first thing you want to do is, like, you want to audit your calendar. You want to audit your calendar, your team's calendar, and you want to really fine tooth comb this, right? So cancel any outdated or unnecessary team meetings. For me, I put reminders in my calendar that I have. And some of those reminders were through the summer of like seeing it in my calendar and taking up space, of time for my son, birthday parties that he had to go to, recurring tasks that I had to do every week in the summer that I don't have to do in the regular season or when he's in school. And so I get to go through my calendar and remove those things intentionally and then audit what's in there. And by doing that, we're making sure that we're very intentional with our time. The next thing in this auditing your calendar or rebuilding that structure is to establish like focus hours. This has been scientifically proven by these studies that I've read in this article, that intentional deep focus hours, or what we would call deep work from Cal Newport, are really, really powerful us in this season, in this time, in this temperature, maybe in just this rhythm of the season of the time of year. And so you get to designate blocks for deep work, both for you and for team members. The next thing that you want to look at is you want to look at the rhythms, right? Revisiting rhythms. So for you, maybe because the summer was stressful as a parent, you needed more time off. You were having to do extra activities to like clear your energy or clear your mind. But now kids are in school or things have slowed down a little bit, things are a little bit more consistent. And so there might be actions or behaviors or habits that you were doing in the summer to help that you don't need to do. And there might be new habits, behaviors, or experiences that you want to utilize in this season to make sure that you're regulating yourself. So think in this one, like, where can I support myself better? And ask your team, like, where can I support you better? Maybe it's a consistent call that wasn't there before to reestablish a cadence or consistency. The next thing in recreating the structure is reinforcing your start and stop times, both for you and for your team, establishing working hours. I know for me over the summer, I was doing a lot of calls that don't normally happen, or a lot of tasks that don't normally happen in my day, but that's because parts of my day I was spending with my son or we were doing adventures. And so I was still getting the work done. But now that I have his predictable school hours and a semblance of a schedule, I can reestablish those times and get them done inside of working hours and avoid that like always on culture. Or for me, what it feels like in the summer is that like I just got to get it done whatever time it gets done. But I don't want that to carry over into the fall. I don't want that to be something that becomes the norm and then end up in that burnout cycle. And so this is one of the ways that you want to think through when you're reestablishing the structure. Those are the things that you want to be auditing. Is your calendar clear? Is it up to date? Is that where you want to be spending your time? Do you have intentional deep focus time, like creative time, deep work time, reflection time? Have you checked your rhythms, your consistency? Maybe it's going back to the gym because you couldn't over the summer because you didn't have kids care. Maybe it's blocking a part of your day to do something that you couldn't do over the summer. Reinforce your start and stop times, and then basically create a cadence for checking in and making sure that everything that you're doing or everything your team is doing is in alignment with where you want to go. So that's step one, is kind of what I would consider the audit and rebuilding the structure. Then it gets into step two. And step two is reestablishing goals, right? Your goals and shared goals. So if you're a solopreneur, these are really just your goals. This is your goals, maybe your partner's goals, your business partner's goals. If you have a team, this is the shared goals where everybody is coming onto the same page, as my client Dave Garrison said, who's been on the podcast, to create buy-in, to make sure everybody knows what they're working towards, right? So the first thing is to actually like set some time or set a meeting for alignment. What you want to think about is you want to name all the things that matter for Q4, right? For this part of the season leading up to the end, and make sure that everybody is on the same page. If you and you have a team, if you think that X, Y, and Z is important, but your team is operating and they think A, B, and C is important, you guys aren't going to be giving energy to the same things. If you're a solopreneur, you need to make sure that the goals that you're working on are where and aligned with where you want to be and wrapping up Q4. So the first one is like having that alignment meeting. So if you're alone, you do this by yourself. What am I prioritizing? What's important in the business? And if you have a team, it's getting buy-in from all of them, which, by the way, you need to read The Buy-in Advantage by Dave Garrison. It's an incredible book. Once you have that clarity, then you want to move into priorities, right? And Dave says this in his book, 3 is better than 7. And what you want to choose is 3 to 5 priorities max. And these could be solo priorities or team priorities, but not everything can be a high priority. And so you can basically make a priority of like, these are the things that if I got to the end of the year and looked back, that we prioritize, that were important, that move the needle in our business. Once you have those priorities, team-wide, this is where you assign clear responsibility. Who's going to own this, right? Who's responsible? Who's accountable? If you're alone, this is where you designate the times of your days or your days, right? For me, there's days that I have designated for coaching calls for clients. And then there's other days that I have designated for podcasts for me to produce this podcast and do those things. And so because it's me, I don't have a team doing those. I treat myself like multiple team members and I separate those things out to make sure that I can focus on those things. And so once you have those priorities, you want to assign the responsibilities for those things so that everybody can take charge, they can own their role, and they can move forward. And then the most important part, because this is about goals, is you want to create some semblance of a visual dashboard that tracks your progress. This could be sticky notes in front of you. This could be a flip chart where you move a little race car down the line. It could be your project management tool like ClickUp, which we use. But you want to make sure that you can see the progress of these things so you know how close you're getting to the end of the year and the race and moving these priorities. And so step number 2 is reestablishing those goals. So step 1, rebuild your structure, right? Which is the container, my calendar, my time, the activities that fill me, reestablishing rhythms. Step number 2 is to reestablish those shared goals. That's for you and a team, or it could just be for you personally, and reestablish what those goals are for. When you move into step 3, it's clarifying roles. Now, this is a priority of somebody with a team, whether you have a team of 1 or a team of 4, but things shift and morph in the season. And if you're doing this alone, I want you to go through this part and listen to this through the lens of your role inside your own company on where you spend your time. Because as a solopreneur, you're a marketer, you're a delivery, you're a coach, you're a copywriter, you're an email writer. And you can't bleed all of those together. But if you separate them out into roles, you can block those and choose those times on when you focus on those activities to be able to execute it no differently than if a team was doing the task. And so for clarifying roles, number 1 is you perform a role audit. So if you have a team, you have everybody list their primary responsibilities, right? And then you look for it and you look for any gaps or overlap where two people are doing the same thing. If you're doing this on your own, you identify that role and responsibilities and you break it down into the buckets like you had a team. And what you're looking for is to make sure you're efficient and you're hitting the needle movers of that task. Once you've had those roles out, if you're unfamiliar with RACI, it's something I use for my private clients, but it's a chart. You can Google it. It's really easy. ChatGPT can give you a rundown, and this is primarily for team. For yourself, you're all of them. But for a team, it's who's responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. And you want to assign those roles so everybody's clear and there's no micromanagement needed. Okay. The next section is to define decision rights. So who has final to say on decisions, who can have authority to execute, which RACI helps with. If you're a solopreneur, this is all on you. And then what you want to do is make sure that there aren't any overlapping responsibilities. There's not anything that gets in the way. And once everybody's clear, like, here's my role. This is what we cleaned up. Here's who's responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. Here's who can decide what and who can execute what. We're all clear on our responsibilities. Then the most important step is documenting this, documenting those roles and responsibilities. So everybody knows. It could be a shared document, could be on the wall if everybody's in your office. But this is a very, very good visual anchor so everybody knows that they're focused. If you're doing this as a solopreneur, you want to have the same thing written down in a document, but you want to do it by those roles and make sure that you can see it so you know exactly what you have to do as a podcast host, as a coach, as a marketer, as a copywriter, so that you can plan your days and your times accordingly to maximize on that season. So that's step 3 in clarifying roles. Step 4, I think, is the most important step of all of this. And if you're a solopreneur, this is for you. If you have a team, this is for you and your team. And step 4 is about reducing distractions. Okay. So this was written by a company called Rescue Time, which is a time tracker that we've used. I've had clients use, but you actually want to audit your time. You want to see where you're spending it to see where all the digital distractions are coming up. Okay. So you want to audit, you want to be aware, nothing wrong in it. But if you are on Instagram too much, you have notifications going off, or you're picking up your phone so many times, doing a time audit either manually or using a tool like this. I'm not affiliated. I don't use this tool personally, but I have clients that use it, like Rescue Time. It can help you see how much you and or your team, how much time you're losing to multitasking, to emails, to messaging, and whatever else is getting in the way. And once you're done auditing that, what you really want to do is you want to figure out how to remove those distractions, right? You want to put gaps up. You want to turn notifications off. You want to encourage focus time. So for you personally, scheduling 2 to 3 focus sessions a week and having your team do the same, where they can focus on these needle moving tasks that we clarified in the roles. And then maybe if you have a team, it's looking at your communication, right? Do we have to message every single moment something happens, or can I get a recap at the end of the day, unless it's something that needs escalated? Can we batch communication? So can we have it so a team member's only checking their messages, 3 times a day, once in the morning, once at lunch, once at night, and the rest of the time is focus time? And even for us as a solopreneur, can we do the same thing? Can we make sure that we stay on task and we're not getting distracted, jumping into Slack, jumping into email, jumping into text, but we're dedicating batched time to that communication so that we can stay on task? And the reason I say this is because I did a podcast on this a couple of years ago. And you don't need to listen to the whole one because I don't remember which one it is personally, but I found this study and I had a productivity person talking to me, and they basically asked me, do you know how long it takes for a human being to get back on task to the depth they were at when they were distracted? And I was like, no. And they're like, it's 20 minutes. So if I'm in the middle of a podcast or I'm in the middle of a deep focus session and I get distracted and it's only for a minute to check my phone or to check my email, and then I try to get back on task, it takes me 20 minutes to get back into the groove where I was. Whereas if I just stayed in the groove, I would have finished within that 20 minutes and I wouldn't have lost that time. And so when we think about reducing distractions, this is huge. And there's layers to this. There could be digital distractions like our notifications, right? There's certain apps I only have on my computer and they're not on my phone. So I don't get them on my phone. They don't distract me during the day. We think about our environment, where we're working, what the space is like, where we're spending our time. But when we're reducing distractions, what we're really doing is we're setting ourselves up to win the game to the best of our ability by having the space to perform our best, right? And so we know, if you watch sports, I'm not a big sports fan, but when the opposing team is shooting, everybody in the audience is waving things and yelling and screaming, right? But when their home team is, they're quiet. They're letting them focus because they know distractions might make them miss. And they also know for their team, allowing them to focus is going to give them the best chance of success. And these are the ways that we want to be setting ourselves up to win as we're working on finishing a race or finishing a project or closing a year out to the best of our abilities, so that we don't feel like we're surviving it, but we're really like thriving in it. Okay. So that's step 4. So step 1 is rebuild structure. Do an audit, check your calendar, make sure where you're spending your time is where you're supposed to be. Your time blocks are there. Check your rhythms, check your start and stop times as things have changed. Number 2 is reestablish your goals. Either a solopreneur is your goals, or as a team, it's your shared goals, right? Where should I be spending my time? What does that alignment look like? What are my 3 to 5 priorities? Who's doing what, or when am I doing what? And then create a tracker so you can see your progress. Number 3 is clarify those roles, right? For a team, this is more important. For us as solopreneurs, or if that's you, it's treating it the same way, but you're responsible, accountable, consultant, and informed in all of it, but it's prioritizing those things. Step number 4 is to reduce all the distractions. Do an audit, do a space audit, an office audit, a time audit, and make sure that you're setting yourself up to win, knowing that every one of those shots is the game-winning shot. And if you don't reduce your distractions, it's going to be like the enemy trying to stop you. But if you can create a focused environment, if you can set yourself up, you're going to have the best chance to make that shot. Step 5 is more so a reframe than is anything else, but they talk about creating psychological safety. And what this really is I know I've had this where coming back from the summer, I feel like I slacked off, right? And I'm like, oh, I got to go. But truthfully, it was just that season had a different priority. And that priority was my son and memories and caring for him and being present for them. And there was a fear of mine of like jumping back into work. I'm like, oh my God, am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to have enough energy to do, 6 podcasts a day again, or all these coaching calls? But truthfully, all of us operate in seasons. There's ebbs and flows. We have days that are great. We have days that are low. And what we're really shooting for is that 70%. We're shooting for that temperance to be able to move consistently and not allow intensity to be the thing that we're judging ourselves on. And so it's okay for all of us. If you have a team, to allow your team like some grace and some slack, that there's seasonal productivity shifts. And in this reframe, what it really boils down to for us to be able to thrive and take this season and hit it hard is to focus on the things that matter, which is like celebrating small wins, having open discussions with our teams or our peers, like what we're doing, and staying focused on those things. And then checking in with ourselves to make sure that we're operating at that 70%, that we're not burning out, that we're not trying to compensate, but instead we're honoring the season that we're in, and that we're doing the best in that season by following the steps before this. And then when you really, really get down to it, the only way that plans work is when they're measured, right? Kate says this all the time, and she says, what isn't measured isn't managed. And so when we take the time to do this reset, what we're saying is, in a really simple analogy or metaphor, is like, I want this fitness goal. So here's the sets and reps I'm going to do, the days I'm going to work out, and I'm going to check my progress against it. Oops, I knocked my water over. I'm going to check my progress against it. I'm going to take progress photos. I'm going to get on the scale. I'm going to check my strength. When it comes to our productivity in the business, it's no different. It's like, hey, I'm going to write this down so that I can measure it, right? I'm going to make sure that I put this somewhere so that I can check in with it and I don't end up willy-nilly, right? So we're maintaining this and allowing ourselves to flow in the ebbs and seasons of entrepreneurship and life and the year and holidays. But in that, we're allowing ourselves to see what we're doing in those seasons so that we can constantly come back to the table and hit reset if we need to. And so the thing to focus on when it's like helping your productivity go the distance, right? Or seeing this all the way through, I've said this before, is that we tend to make this mistake where we overvalue intensity, but we undervalue consistency. And consistency is where we win the game, right? It's these small things that we do over and over and over again that create the compound effects and the results. And so, in order for us to go the distance, we have to take the time to do these audits and to make these plans, and then to allow ourselves a benchmark or a baseline to measure against to make adjustments. Kids are no different. If you're a parent, we can think of all the other areas in our life where we do this, even like a simple workout. Like if you have the intention to go for a run and you're exhausted, you could quit, or you could just run slower or walk and then measure against yourself in that, right? We have these moments where we prioritize it in these other buckets, but for some reason we don't prioritize it in our businesses. And so how do you set yourself up to go to the distance? How do you set yourself up to be consistent over intense? Well, you check in and go through steps 1 through 5 as much as needed. Maybe it's once a month, maybe it's once a quarter. That's step 1. Step 2 is whatever you find in steps 1 to 5, like let's say role clarity. We make sure that we're spending our time in that bucket because we laid that out and said that was the plan. If we find ourselves or our team not doing those action items, then we might have missed the mark, and we need to revisit that to make sure that we are spending our time in the right area. And then step 3 is to maintain focus sessions, not becoming a slave to meetings or meetings about meetings or back and forth communication over and over that's getting in the way of that like deep work, right? Where we're actually producing something. And I think what's so important, and I reframe this for myself all the time, a lot of us, if you have physical products, it's really easy to see. You actually have to manufacture the product, make the product, and ship the product to be able to give it to somebody. But sometimes in coaching, sometimes in digital products or consulting or podcasts, we forget that that's still a product that's being created and we treat it like it's not. So it's like we get halfway down the assembly line and then we leave it, and then we disappear for 2 days and then come back to it and wonder why the product isn't ideal. And so I find it's helpful to reframe some of that sometimes to even this podcast, right? Like I have phases of this recipe coming to life. There's the prep phase, the notes, the research, laying out the groundwork. Then there's the recording phase, right? That if I stop this recording right now and I leave for an hour, I pick up the phone or I check a notification, this podcast is not going to be good if I come back to it a day later, an hour later, 2 days later. But if I see this podcast all the way through this phase, this stage, which is the creation stage, and then I hit end in a couple of minutes because we're almost done, then I can move it into the next phase, which is the distribution phase, the editing and distribution phase. But if I interrupt those processes, or if I interrupt this in the middle of it, it doesn't make for a good product. And so that's what all of us are working towards. That's what all of us are building towards. And these are the ways that we can thrive, right? That we can stay consistent over a long period of time, the way that we can run the race through the ebbs and flows of business, through the market shifts, through the seasons, through the demand and the release of that demand over and over again, is by really following these 5 steps. The 6th step of this model is just the reflection period. It's holding ourselves accountable to this consistency and allowing ourselves to go through. And so my invitation for you, for all of you, no matter where you are, even if you've done this before, is to take a moment and to go back and check yourself on these things. Go through each one of these steps, step 1 through 5, and make sure that you're setting yourself up if you're a solopreneur, or you end your team up if you're an entrepreneur with a team. Because if not, what ends up happening is that things fall to you that were supposed to be given to a team, or we're spending our time and energy into buckets that actually aren't moving the needle or close to our vision or close to our goals. And so I'm going to say them to you one more time because I think they're important. Step number 1 is rebuild your structure. I was on a podcast earlier getting interviewed, and I said one of the biggest mistakes people make is this romanticism about what it looks like. As entrepreneurs, that structure rebuild sometimes happens monthly, sometimes it happens quarterly, but it needs to happen at least once a quarter, because if you're operating the same way that you did 6 months ago or 12 months ago, you're either in the same place and you haven't felt the pain yet, or you're not growing. And so rebuilding structure, meaning like where we spend our time and how we spend our time, is really, really important to consistently do over and over again. Once we've audited that time and we know where we are and where we're spending it, then it's to get clear on what our goals are or reestablish those goals for us and for our team. Step 3 is to then clarify those roles. If this is my role, where am I spending my time and how does that role create fruit? And if I know that, then I know what to prioritize and I know what to create. Step 4 is then before I get onto the field or into the game, how do I set myself up to win that game? How do I eliminate those distractions? How do I eliminate them so that when I get on that field or when I focus, when I go to record, that nothing gets in the way? And this is small. It can be trivial things like recording this podcast and just allowing my notifications to be turned off, because they are. The moment I hit record, it's do not disturb. Nothing comes into my computer. It could be bigger. Where I work, there might be deep focus time that you can't do in the office or you can't do in your home because you live with your family and you're a solopreneur. So some of that deep focus time, you have to go in the backyard. You got to hide, or you got to go find somewhere, or a coffee shop, right? It can be small or it can be large, but we're really setting ourselves up to win, which then is number 5. And number 5 is that psychological safety for us to re-engage, right? No matter what season you're in, no matter where you are when you go through these steps, you're just collecting information and data. Just like when I lost 100 pounds for the last time and I actually kept it off, the only difference between that time and the other times where I gained it back again is that when I hit a sticking point this last time, instead of beating myself up and getting upset, I'm like, man, I've made it pretty far. Like, what am I doing that's no longer working? Okay, what do I need to change? Okay, let's stay consistent and recover, right? And so getting rid of that blame and the fault and really just looking at it like information, no different than a professional athlete. I mean, I say this all the time, and I'm not even a sports fan, but the best baseball players in the world get paid literally $50 million to perform at 30%, right? Like, they're missing more than they're winning. They're striking out more than they're getting on base. Quarterbacks, none of them have a perfect passing rating. Basketballs, players don't miss every shot. I mean, don't hit every shot that they make. They miss and they miss, and all of them miss more than they make it. But they don't judge themselves on the misses. What they look at is like, okay, what worked, what didn't work? Where did I slip? How can I go back to basics? How can I go back to foundations? And I think that that's the biggest invitation for all of us. And so I invite all of us to use this period of productivity, which scientifically proven, because I have a study that will drop in the show notes, is really by default designed for us to perform our best and to utilize that to our advantage. And when we have that to our advantage, we follow these steps. We make sure we know where we're spending our time and it's not creeping or being bled out or being hijacked by somebody else. Then we establish those goals. We identify our roles within it or our team's roles within it. We remove the distractions and then we get on the field. And then at some degree, we measure our progress. We see it visually. We move a sticky note. We use a product manager. We check a Google Doc and we see what's working and not working. And if something is out of alignment or our time is being sent somewhere else, we come back to these goals. Because if you have a goal that you say is important, but yet you're not spending your time there, there's only one of two things happening. Thing number 1 is it's important and you're avoiding it, which is self-sabotage. Thing number 2 is it's not important. And so we're going to the thing that is important. And if that's the case, we need to reshift the priorities and put that workout on paper and allow ourselves the time to make that adjustment. And so this was really, really good. It went a little longer than I thought. This is beefy. This is meaty. But I also want you to take some time and pause with this. I want you to really, really lean into this. And this is not one of those episodes that you listen to and you let swing by. Like if this landed at any other level, my invitation for you is to use this. And at minimum, I just want you to pick one thing, like one thing from this episode at minimum, that if you did, it would set you up through the end of the year to really, really win. Could be a cleanup. It could be removing an app from your phone. It could be turning off distractions. It could be setting up communication windows where you only check your email once a day at the beginning and the end. It could be a conversation with your team. Whatever it is, do it now while you have the time and the space and set yourself up to win and perform your best. And when it comes to this episode, I think this episode is going to be one that I reference a lot. It's episode 637, right? I'm gonna say that I reference a lot because this is one of those ones to come back to and follow those 5 steps. Every single time something feels out of alignment, or when we're in a lull, or when there's a change in our seasons, right? So at minimum, do this once a quarter. At maximum, lean into this whenever you need to. But I think that this is the invitation, if you're hearing this and it landed, to take some time and step away so that when you get onto the field, you can perform your best. You can set up a system for yourself to thrive in this season. You can use tools to your advantage, and you can really, really understand why we're creating the results we are by focusing on what inputs we're putting in. And so if I can help you in any way, I love helping clients do this. It's my favorite thing. You know how to get a hold of me. Website's mindofgeorge.com. You know my Instagram, slide into my DMs, whatever that is. Or I think you have time, book a last minute ticket to come to our event. We have a couple of seats left. And we do this in Montana for 3 days. And so you'll be with me and a couple other entrepreneurs where we do this together. I take you through it and we focus on the player, which is you, a lot of this stuff. Then the playbook, marketing, customer journey, and then the process and planning to then go execute and see the year through. And the event's in October. It's at the end of October, which means it will give you all of November, all of December to close the year out strong and then kick off January on a fresh foot, excited and ready to go. And so that's what I want to share with you guys today. So I love you. I want you to remember that relationships will always beat algorithms. And I also want to say this one last thing. I resisted structure so hard for so long because it made it real. It's freedom. You've taken the time to do this. You figure out where you're spending your time. You auditing, adjusting, and scheduling it in is pure freedom. And I used to think it was the opposite. I was wrong. Now I realize why I thrived in the Marine Corps and the same way that we can thrive in entrepreneurship. And so I love you to pieces. You'll either see me in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs. But either way, we're out.